Hey ho, hey ho, hey ho. What up, Because I'm live. This is your boy, the only streamer without an intro and things like that. I'm not sure if I need an intro or something like that, but maybe one day, when God decides to be with us. Okay, good sound, everything good. So today we're just going to have a quick discussion about Yoichi Isagi and his evolution and how he went from. Hey, how are you, Chi? How are you, Etsu? It's been a while. It's been a minute since we've been on stream. But today we're just going to talk about the evolution of Yoichi Isagi. Snips, what up, Freddy? I'm on vacation, so I won't for the whole stream. The boy is on vacation. Envy Yoichi. But have a great time there. Enjoy your time. How are you, Slips? Have a great vacation. Like, stay safe, stay sharp. But it's been a while since we got any content from either One Piece or Block, which it seems like Block is still going to have another week of a break or it's still break week. I'm good. How about you? I'm not Gucci. I'm lagging. Maybe it's you, and you're on vacation. Maybe you're on vacation too much, bro. Maybe that's why. But Sleeps, I'm not Gucci. You're cooking something insane and you're leaving us out. We see your moves. We see everything you do, dog. You know, and we can see the things you're doing out there, and you're leaving us behind. Sleeps, how cool of you. We will get to devour you one day, though. We will fight back as hard as we can. So today we're going to discuss Isagi Yoichi because the boy has evolved when you look at what he's been through and what the boy will do or achieve from now on. Because Isagi came in as a great player for what we knew, but we met players like Baru and Bachira. We were like, okay, maybe I am lagging. Uh, maybe I'm lagging a lot. Maybe the choose was right. We sure the choose right. Internet is quite bad, but standard procedure. I'm lagging a lot too. It seems like it's my side that's worse. My side is worse. But in Blue Lock, we were introduced to Kira in the first place. It was Kira versus Isagi. And in that time or in that moment, Isagi wasn't able or capable of fighting his own battle, to say. Isagi was in a very tough position because we know that Japan has an all for one mentality. When we lose all together, and when we win as a team. So that type of ego didn't work for Isagi because it cost him a chance or a shot to the championship and to the U20 because Kira took that position automatically, which was quite a hard thing to watch. But when we thought that it was the end of Isagi, or we thought that maybe we were gonna get another run of the high school tournament, it seemed like we found a letter from Blue Lock. You know. And with Blue Lock or the Blue Lock project came a certain egoist or a certain guy who was really crazy. I don't wanna lie. You know, ego is really, really crazy. And when you look at it at the end of the day, ego is just him. Because ego had ideas that were often not often shared or not often respected in Japan. You know, even around the world, ego is somewhat a different type of coach or a protagonist. So ego plays a very big role when it comes to Isagi because at some point it seems like ego handpicked Isagi himself, which seems like quite a long shot, but trust me, it is possible. Because at the end of the day, Ego is interacting with Isagi more than any other player in Block, which I feel is not a bad thing because Ego and Isagi need to show us their relationship because no one said that Isagi reminds him of Ego, So I'm hoping we'll get to see a glimpse of Jinpachi Ego through Isagi. That's one of my goals, or we'll get to see just Jinpachi Ego playing ball. But this is not a Ego stream. This is not a Jinpachi Ego stream, but this Ego is generally dedicated to Isagi, because Isagi has moved from just a player who can understand or who can visually grasp plays. Because at first, we know that Bullock players have abilities that was introduced like firsthand. It was really quite hard to understand what Isagi was good at. You know, you couldn't quite figure it out at first glance what Isagi was good at. But when we got to interact with Bullock more, or we got to see more episodes of Bullock, you could see that Isagi has some kind of vision. Isagi, it's at first it seemed like premonition to me. You know, at first I thought that Isagi could see the future or he could predict the future. That's what I thought. But it seems like the brother was using his eyes in unconscious ways. He didn't know that he had special vision, spatial or something like that. But he didn't know that he had good vision at the beginning of his career. And then what happened is that Isagi played with players like Bachira and Baru and Nagi. That was the first time where Isagi felt like, yeah, I'm really out of my league here. Because when the first team Z was formed, it was Raichi, Gagamaru, it was Chigiri, I think, and Kunigami. A lot of players were in Team Z, a very, very interesting few candidates. But in Team Z, Isagi used to rescue the team here and there, but it was through the help of Bachira. Bachira was just hoping that Isagi would snuff out the ego in him. But Bachira saw something in Isagi that helped Isagi to survive throughout period because in the first selection, it seemed like Isagi was going out. I don't know that, but in the first selection, it really genuinely seemed like Isagi is going to just go out of Bullock. But Bachira pulled out an assist in a game that was unheard of because that assist from Bachira passing to Isagi to at the last moment, and then Isagi's monster came out in the last second and he took out Kira, which was really satisfying. I don't know why. The ego in me was burning when Isagi disqualified Kira. I don't know why. I was really celebrating in my bed. But when I saw that, I really understood that maybe there's something in Isagi that isn't normal to Japan as a nation. Maybe Isagi is a different kind of player. But we got to see that there are different besides Isagi because Bachira was one person who was outclassing Isagi at at every stage. Bachira was way way good than Isagi at anything you can think of because Bachira was the one who was hyping up Isagi most of the time. When Isagi lost hope, Bachira was there to be like, dog, how can you be disappointed right now? Because we are 3-0 down. These guys are way dope. We need to get fired up. Or I'm just fired up. It was Bachira. I know that Bachira had his own downfalls or his own flaws, but Bachira was one of the greatest reasons that Isagi made it through the block. Because being with Bachira and losing Bachira was a very, very big test or step for Isagi. Bachira was the breaking and what made Isagi in Bullock. But when we fast forward to Bullock or to the teams at moment, we get to meet Baru Shoei, the Tyrant King. Baru is the first Tyrant that we met in Bullock and felt like, okay, maybe this guy is him. You know, I'm sure that when you saw Baru Shoei for the first time, even when I saw Baru for the first time, was like, oh, this guy is dope. This guy is him. And he turned out to claim that he's a king. At first, it was like, king, what king, bullshit king. But at the end of the day, he has proven himself to be the king of football or to be the future king of football. He has that potential, I don't wanna lie. But when you look back to Baru's entrance, Baru showed us the philosophy of Bullock because Igor was talking about a team is not, or maybe football, when football started, it wasn't about formations or anything like that. At first, it was just all about goals. So each and everyone there was a striker. So anyone and everyone was trying to score a goal. But Baru was the first player to break that type of mentality in pull-up because Baru firstly pulled out insane dribbling. When Baru pulled out that insane dribbling, everyone in Team Z tried to stop Baru. And then Baru didn't shoot, he instead assisted his other teammate that was free. And then that resulted in a goal for Baru's team. What that created, it created a team around Baru. Each and every player was like, you know what, let's support this guy. So for the first time, Isagi saw what Eagle's ideals were, like turning one into 10 or turning a moment into a team. That was what Baru was at that moment for Isagi. Baru was the first pure striker that Isagi met. You know, I know that at the first round, Isagi couldn't devour Baru completely, but Baru showed Isagi a lot. Baru taught Isagi a lot about being a striker. And then we fast forward to Rio and Nag. Those are the second group we made in this lineup. But when we come to Rio and Nagi, we see that Rio and Nagi have different types of egos. Rio is more of pampering Nagi. We didn't expect to see that kind of philosophy in Pulau. I really thought that this would be a group of insane brats, but we saw a guy sulking up to another striker, and we were like, okay, what the fuck is going on? We were introduced to bromance, and for a moment we accepted it, but it didn't end well. But I don't want to spoil anything. So, with the Nagi and Rio introduced in Blog, we get to meet characters like Zantetsu. So, Zantetsu is the first guy to test Chikiri when it comes to speed. You know, Chikiri wasn't into his sprinting bag yet until he met guys like Zantetsu. Because Zantetsu even taught Shikiri a lot about sprinting. A lot of development happened in the first round. But the most player to develop in the first round was Isagi Yoichi because at the end of the day, each and every player had their own talent, but Isagi scored the most important goals at the end of the day. No one could understand how Isagi could do it, but Isagi had different talents either than Baru, either than Nagi and Ryo, but Isagi could see things that other people cannot see. Isagi had insane football IQ, which was displayed earlier on. Even though Isagi doesn't have the dribbling, the pace to back him up, but Isagi is just a good standard player, which we overlooked when we met characters like Baru and Nagi. We were like, there's no way Isagi can survive with this guy. But Isagi learned how to devour people because that was the next stage of Bullock. It was more competitive and more direct with the number one of Bullock. So when Isagi met characters like Baru, or Isagi was forced to select Baru, but when Isagi played with Baru, not against for the first time, but when Isagi played with Baru, he understood that, what, as egoists or as players, we are not the same. Do you really understand? We are not the same. So what Isagi had to understand was that Baru is not the same kind of player as Bachir. Baru is not the same player as Nag who will just pass to Isagi or play with Isagi as much as he hoped to. But Baru proved to be an anomaly in football that won't end with him because it's not Baru only. We met players like Shiro, which were more advanced than Baru, but the same kind of ego. So players like Shiro were just a quite good representation of Baru. That Baru is not a bad player, but he needs to develop too, like each and every player in Bullock. Because at first you had Baru, you judged players like Baru, and you're like, nah, Baru is not making it into Bullock, or he won't be the top striker at the end of Bullock. But Isagi learned to devour people from Baru because as good as Baru wasn't willing to play football with Isagi and Nagi the way they wanted to play football. But at the end of the day, Isagi understood that if I cannot play with this guy the way I want to, why don't I just devour him? You know, why don't I just use him as bait? And that is what Isagi did at the end of the day. Isagi was like, you know what, I'm tired of just begging this guy to play football with me. I'm just going to devour him. You know, and that led to Isagi understanding different kinds of egoists in Blue Lock. And that's the greatest edge that Isagi has, is that Isagi can use other people's egos to his advantage. Isagi can treat people like a pope. Even players like Rin have the same ability when it comes to destroyer, maybe even more precise, but Isagi is one of those players who can just see other players' egos and learn from them. That's how Isagi was able of devouring players like Nico. It's not like Nico was a bad striker or anything like that, but Nico just made the same mistake Isagi, or was going to make the same mistake that Isagi was did before, passing to your teammate instead of risking it all and scoring. It was Nico's option to assist his number 9. But Isagi intercepted the ball before that, ending their journey as a team right there and then. You know, they took, did they take Chigiri, or yeah, I think they took Chigiri from the team, but they took a player from maybe they didn't take a player because I think that was before the time of the second selection. I think it was the first selection when Nico and Isagi went against each other. So that was a very important game to see from us as fans of Isagi, because from there we could see that Isagi could take on players in not just dribbling or anything, but Isagi can break players when it comes to important plays. Not only can he create important plays, but he can also stop other plays, which was very good to see that the boy has a great view of the field, or he can adapt very well to the pitch. That was Isagi Yoichi at the first glance. But Isagi he expected too much of himself, or maybe the boy thought he was him at the time. But Isagi flat out chose to go against Rin at the first bet. So it was Isagi, Rin, and not it was Isagi, Bachira, and Nagi. Which at first I knew at the first going that Isagi is not winning this one. If you're going to see what Rin Itoshi is made of, Isagi is not winning this one, and that is true. Isagi didn't get a chance to win that game. He didn't stand a chance at all. But Rin Itoshi showed showed Isagi that there are geniuses out there in football. Because Isagi had met geniuses before, but geniuses like Bachira, like Baru and Nagi, they didn't amount anything when it comes to Rin Itoshi. Rin Itoshi was just different. This boy was born to play football or to destroy other football players. Let me put it correct, in his ego, or in his type of ego. But Itoshi Rin wasn't a normal kind of a player when it comes to Bullock. At first, Itoshi Rin was the number one. He's always been the number one of Bullock. What am I saying? No, Itoshi Rin is the number one of Bullock and will always remain the number one of Bullock. But Itoshi Rin had different types of stats compared to Isagi. In fact, Itoshi Rin had everything that Isagi had and what Isagi lacked. When it comes to physicality, Itoshi Rin had it. When it comes to pace, he had it. Itoshi had everything that Isagi didn't have. And then it was the first time that Isagi felt like, yeah, I cannot win. But Itoshi Rin didn't completely break Isagi because he taught him about using his eyes at the end of the day. He was like, you should really learn how to use your eyes. And then Isagi used that moment to not maybe break down or just act weird, but Isagi took that moment and grew from that moment. What did I just say? But yeah, Isagi didn't bread or didn't just fool around with that. Isagi took his lesson and he was like, you know what, I need to improve. And the only way to improve is by getting into the field and playing a game. So Isagi went against they went against Baru's team or something like that, but they got players like Chigiri, Baru at the end of the day, which it was quite good because at first time, Isagi seemed like an outfetched striker, but when we reached the second selection, we saw that Isagi can be at the end of the day be a goal scorer, because Isagi scored one of the most important goals. I said this multiple times already, but Isagi is just good at scoring the important goals. So he could help his team here and there, but he understood that he was lacking something. But he got it anyways by devouring players like Baru and learning that you need to be entrenched with other players, learning more about. He didn't even know much about his. Maybe he knew about the flow state, but Isagi was just in his development phase then. And his development phase. Isagi was just in his development phase. With that being said, the boy just took took a different leap. Isagi was ready to go against Rin Itoshi in no moment. And then when he went against Itoshi Rin, we saw that he had no chance, but still Isagi didn't back off. He tried his very end to devour Rin, which at the end of the day, Itoshi Rin acknowledged Isagi that Isagi beat him when it comes to reading the game, but it only came down to luck, which was on Rin's side. That is why Rin won against Isagi. But at the end of the day, Isagi beat Rin for the first time in the second selection, but he didn't win the game, you know. He lost the game, but he won the war at the end of the day because Rin got to acknowledge him and he got to play again, alongside Rin. But it didn't last for a very long time because after the second selection came the World Five. That's when Isagi got shattered the most because while Rin was going against the five best players that were introduced in Block first, it was Luno, Loki was there. I don't remember the other two guys, but I think there was some England player too. But it's not Chris Prince in this instant. So when they introduced the World Five, it was only Itoshi Rin that was going or who was playing with these guys in the same level. Rin wasn't scared of the top five players in Block of that time. Even Loki was interested in Itoshi Rin that, oh, this boy is good. And he was one of the few players to score a goal against the World Five or the best top five players of the Blue Lock world. Him and Shido honorable mention, which at some point that showed Isagi that Rin is really crazy. Rin is not just believing in himself, but Rin has the ego to go against the world's best players. So Isagi just knew from that point that he needed to work more on his ego and his game. Isagi didn't get to be delusional at this point. We are picking and saying, please subscribe, guys. If you're a Blue Lock fan, in fact, please leave a subscribe, a like, even though you don't stay around, but please leave a subscribe. It will help us out a lot. But Isagi wasn't shaken by the fact that he lost to the World Five. The boy just tried to work at the end of the day. With him putting on the work, Isagi just gained something different because from seeing the world class players, he understood the difference between his physicality, his reach, or what he can do personally. So Isagi had to gain different kinds of skills, or he understood that he lacks a lot when it comes to being a striker. And his goal was far from him until the next selection came, and then Isagi met players like Hiyori. And players like Hiyori made a very big difference when it comes to Isagi because Hiyori understood what Isagi wanted to become and how to be that kind of a player. But Hiyori was just a laid off kid, Hiyori was going through his own difficulties at that time. But Hiyori told Isagi that, you know what, maybe you are that good, but you need to stop thinking a lot. You need to act reflexively sometimes. And then when Isagi trained with that in mind, he used it in a game against Shido and Rin, and then he understood that even though I am not a genius, but if I quit thinking a lot and just focus more on moving moving reflexively, I can achieve more. That is when Isagi truly got a feeling or a touch of surpassing players like Rain or Shido because he scored that goal against or in between Shido and Rain. And they were both excited. They were really both excited seeing Isagi do what he did. So Isagi didn't just prove to be capable of surpassing players like Itoshi Sai, not Itoshi Sai or Itoshi Rin, but he proved that he can devour them and form chemical reactions with rain, especially because we haven't seen a Shido and Isagi chemical reaction before. So Isagi is a player that can link up with Rin Itoshi most. So we know that a fallout happened between Shido and Rin, and then Shido went to play against the Japanese twins, so that's fine. And then Igo was left with no choice but to place Isagi as the second or as a player that can give Itoshi Rin a challenge. Isagi was given a task to devour Itoshi Rin because he was the first or he was one of the few players to prove that he can devour Itoshi Rin. I know that many players have beaten Itoshi Rin to be specific, but Isagi has proved it that he can play with Ren Itoshi and he can devour Ren Itoshi. So Ego put him in a supporting role from Ren Itoshi, which in that game Isagi Yoichi got to understand everything that he had built up from back then. You know. So Isagi didn't become a great striker from the U20 tournament, no. When Isagi was playing against the national team of the Japanese, he wasn't the best striker in Pulak. He just had those kind of features that prove that he can become a player who is the best in Pulak. Isagi wasn't the best player, but he had shown times and times again that he can be the best. I hope many people can agree with me on that. But when you look at what Isagi did in that time, that is when Isagi first stood in the U20 page. He played around Rin Itoshi and he was devouring Rin at the same time, because they have that relationship that we cannot play together. Let's just work together and devour each other at the same time. So, with that being said, Isagi and Rin were just showing a great relationship between them. It was really great, I don't want to lie. But the thing is, Isagi couldn't keep up with. Let me not say he couldn't keep up, but Isagi couldn't find a logical way to beat Oliver Ike. You know, Isagi, it was the first time that Isagi met a world class defender. It was the biggest challenge that Isagi ever came to meet. Not even Isagi, but the entire of Blue Lock, because Blue Lock as a whole, they felt Aiko in their spine. Like Aiko was in their back for real. Like no doubt. Like Aiko was the best player in the U20 game. But Oliver Aiko didn't just give Isagi a step to grow, but he showed Isagi that it's not only about strikers. Nah, even defenders have it in them to be egoist and to be as great as strikers because Oliver Ike was the first defensive talent that we've ever met in Bullock, which was great. So Oliver Ike didn't just push Isagi to evolve, but even Itoshi Ren. Itoshi Ren was forced to evolve by Oliver Ike. Baro himself was forced to evolve by who? By Oliver Ike. The only player that Aiko couldn't keep under taps was Bachir. For some reason, Bachira was the only player who was capable of devouring this guy. And then when he did that, I was like, okay, maybe Bachira is him. Yeah. Because even though he didn't score, at the end of the day, he devoured everyone who was there in that team. So that was a very good moment to see from Bachira. But Isagi had his moments in that game. Like his playmaking was really, really insane. But Isagi was just overshadowed by the talent of Blue. You know, it's really hard for Isagi to stand out when he's playing with Blue players because when you have players like Karasu, when you have players like Nagi, when you have players like Bachira, when you have players like Rin Itoshi, like the talent in Blue is endless. But Isagi was just shadowed by those players. He was dangerous to the national team of Japan, but he wasn't the biggest threat in Blue. Yeah, he was the number two threat in Blue. I don't know, but Isagi wasn't as dangerous as Itoshi Rin. So everyone was hoping that the game would get decided by Itoshi's side, which was the greatest thing I've ever witnessed. I don't know. The downfall of Itoshi Sai in that moment, I don't care what anybody says, but Itoshi Rin in that moment surpassed Sai Itoshi. From all the interactions I've seen from brothers in anime, from brothers like Itoshi, not Itoshi Sai, but from what I've seen from Itachi and Sasuke, I know for a fact that this moment is a Itachi and Sasuke moment from Sai Itoshi and Rin Itoshi respectively. I don't want to lie. So seeing all the types of brotherhood, like I really knew from that time that you know what, maybe this is what Itoshi was hoping for. But the evolution of Itoshi Rin really showed Isagi that you know what, this guy is insane. I need to focus on myself as an individual, not on Itoshi Rin, because he couldn't keep up with Itoshi Rin and his bizarre movements at that time. No, Isagi could only cover for Rin's blind spots. That was the best he could do at that moment. He couldn't play with Rin in the same level. The only thing he could do was cover his blind spots because Rin had many blind spots. I don't wanna lie. I don't wanna lie. But as we are picking Blue Lockers, please subscribe. But when Isagi saw the gears or the levels that Isagi and his brother, not Isagi, but Rin and Sai brought, that was insane for Isagi to see. So Isagi was like, you know what? You know what? Let me do something. Let me just believe in Rin, trends, and then maybe Lady Luck will fall upon me. So in that moment, we get to see Isagi use everything that he was taught or everything that he learned in Kula. Trends is because Isagi is focused in what happens in a game rather than what an individual player can do. So Isagi like believed 100% that Rin Itoshi could beat Sai without a doubt. So with that belief, Itoshi Rin did actually pull through with beating Sai, but it was with Isagi's movement to Aiku's blind spot. It took great. I would say maybe Isagi didn't. Yo, Oradilichi, how are you, Jay? How are you, Oradili? But I would say that Itoshi, not even Itoshi Rin, but the last play of that match, Isagi Yoichi didn't. Tariq is in the building too. The boys have landed. How are you, Oradili and Tariq? Jeez, how are you? But Isagi was just decisive to the last moment of the game. Isagi just went to the blind spot or to the point where Aiku couldn't stop him. Which led to the final goal in the U20 versus or the Japanese national team block team, which was one of the greatest goals. I don't know, but the greatest part in block happens when we meet a guy called Michael Kaiser. If you're an anime fan only, sorry for the spoilers. But for real, when you meet a guy called Michael Kaiser, things take a different turn. Because Michael Kaiser is not a normal striker. No. Michael Kaiser is him. If you know of the new Gen 11 players, Michael Kaiser was one of the new Gen 11 players. An honorary member of the new Gen 11 players, which is Michael Kaiser. So Michael Kaiser was different from any other striker we've seen before. Even Rin Itoshi was lacking when it comes to Michael Kaiser. I really think that Michael Kaiser beat Itoshi Rin when it comes to a few things, because at the end of the day, Michael Kaiser and Isagi forced Rin to evolve. I know it might be hard to swallow, or it might be very hard to understand, but when Michael Kaiser made it to Blue Lock, everything changed. You know, even Isagi himself knew that Michael Kaiser is not the normal player. Michael Kaiser is the guy I want to be like. You know, so Michael Kaiser showed the same, or Michael Kaiser is like Isagi. Let me just say that. You know, another Isagi made it to Blue Lock, and he comes in the form of a German this time, but this German is not a normal Isagi. Nah, he is the best version of Isagi, like the literal best, because when it comes to movement, when it comes to passing, it was nothing like we've ever seen in Blue Lock before. No striker could do what Kaiser was doing at that point. Kaiser showed us a different type of ball game when it comes to striking. Even Isagi himself had to agree that nah, Michael Kaiser is him. So Michael Kaiser was the perfect learning, or the perfect guy for Isagi to meet at that time, because I don't care about the master players at that point, but Michael Kaiser was the greatest teacher of Isagi Yoichi. You know, at times Isagi had to step back and look at what Kaiser was doing and be like, okay, this guy, I need to learn from him. I know that they had their own beef, but at the end of the day, it worked out. But Isagi and Kaiser, like it's a monster version of Isagi, because there's something called the Kaiser Impact. I don't know if many of you are familiar with the Kaiser Impact, but the Kaiser Impact is so special that he is the number one when it comes to swinging his leg, or the fastest shot in the world goes to Michael Kaiser. That's not his only attribute. This boy has insane speed. His physicality is insane. His passing, Michael Kaiser has the greatest passing. Like the way he plays with his team, I'm telling you, Michael Kaiser is one of the best players we've ever seen. His his Kaiser impact, I don't have to say anything about that. But meta vision, because meta vision, I will say that again. Meta vision, guys. Meta vision. That's that's the most important thing in Isagi's evolution. Meta vision, you know, because from learning how to use his peripheral vision, Isagi didn't stop there. Isagi was like, okay, there's this Sharingan that we can get in Blue Lock. Okay, I want to awaken the Rinnegan right now. Isagi was like, okay, I want the six eyes, or whatever Gochu's eyes are. But Isagi was like, you know what? If there is a way to evolve this vision of mine right now, and if Kaiser just showed me how to do it, I'm going to do the same thing. And then Isagi unlocked Meta Vision, because if Isagi couldn't unlock Meta Vision, I don't know who else in Blue Lock could. Isagi had the best special vision when it comes to Blue Lock players, but Isagi finally did it. He awakened his Rinnegan, which is Meta Vision. And let me tell you something, we've never seen Isagi move like this. Now, Isagi can read everyone in the field. He can read everyone. He can see everything. His He's seeing the pitch in a godly dimension. You know, so this is the first time where Isagi feels like, you know what, I can really, really destroy anyone when it comes to the type of vision that I have right now. Play Roblox, Tariq G. I don't have a proper PC, but maybe month end I'll buy a proper PC. Don't worry, my brother. Maybe month end I'll buy a proper PC. But Isagi was like, you know what? Right now I can beat each and everyone in Blue Lock if I have this type of vision. And the boy wasn't there, you know. That was the first step in Isagi being the best. Everyone could see it at that point that meta vision was insane. You know, because when Michael Kaiser displayed meta vision, you know, he could move in the, you know, like picking the best moves possible. Because if I can see everyone, you know, it was like Rin's puppet mastery or something like that. I don't know if you remembered Rin's puppet master panel, but Rin was like sitting like this above everyone else in Pulak. No, Rin was like this and everyone in Pulak, and then was controlling them like puppets. You know, so it was the first time that Isagi had that type of vision. Let me tell you something. Let me tell you something. Let me tell you something. When Isagi attained meta vision, he hired Michael Kaiser as a clown. That was the first day that Isagi hired Michael Kaiser as a clown. And let me tell you something. That was the most insane panels in Bullock because I I see each and every panel I've ever seen of Isagi Yoichi as an egoist. That was the most satisfying moment that Isagi, because at that point we had a personal vendetta against Michael Kaiser. Isagi is not scoring at the next chapter. Isagi is scoring in the next chapter, but we will get to that in the future of the blog chapter of this stream. But Isagi will score in this chapter. I'm telling you. So with that being said, Isagi was like, you know what, I can I can beat you, Michael Kaiser. Now that I've learned meta vision from you, you know what, I will destroy you, and you will be left a naked emperor. I was like, yeah, it's about to end. So Isagi enters his villain arc, and the worst thing to ever happen is that Isagi, the first game, I think it was against Bug, you know. I think that was the first game, but Isagi didn't get to play in the first game, you know. So if Isagi wasn't played in the first game, he only got to get into the pitch because of the ratings. You know, everyone in Block thought that Isagi was a celebrity at that point. So because everyone wanted to see him and it was good for the Block TV, Noah was forced to bring in Isagi. But Isagi was like, you know what? I'm not going to suck Kaiser's balls for me to play in this team. I'm going to dethrone this guy, you know. And then Isagi launches his first coup d'etat and it works. That's strange. Or he will do a two-gun volley shot. Yes, a two-gun volley. Tariq, wait, Tariq. Let's build up to that moment. We are coming. We are not that far. We're just going to do the 4 games of the NEL and then we go to the U20. So we are not that far. So please, Tariq, let's not spoil the stream anymore. I know we want to talk about the next chapter very, very much, but we'll do the chapter predictions soon. So stay along with me, you know. Stay along. So with the first game, Isagi was just like, I'm not going to force a goal, but I'm going to create a play that is different from this Michael Kaiser philosophy. And then Kunegami scored his first goal in the NEL and Isagi got a assist, you know. And then Isagi had a role and he had a value in the team at that point because he was the only player that can show playmaking skills such as Michael Kaiser or anything like that. So this was the time for Isagi to prove himself. I'm going to steal a brain rot bay. Okay, no stress. Go and game, chief. Go and work, Tariq. No stress. We will meet, you know, always together, chief. The streams are always a blast when we are together. But yeah, so Isagi was like, you know what, I'm going to dethrone Michael Kaiser. And then we come to the next game, which is the Manchester City versus German, or, or Germany, something like that. It's Isagi's team. So Isagi gets to play with Nagi and Rio. And to our expectation, we were hyped. We were hyped about the game. So it was Chigiri, Rio, and Nagi. So in this game, Isagi wasn't bothered by Nagi at any point. Nagi and Chigiri and Rio weren't Isagi's priorities. The only thing that was important to Isagi was dealing with Michael Kaiser. So as Isagi is trying to outperform Michael Kaiser, he sees that no, man, this guy is seeing the pitch in a very different level than me. And then as Isagi gets to do his shit, he devours his Kaiser when it comes to metavision. So Isagi was like, let me step back and watch what makes this guy special. And then Isagi got to understand that, Michael Kaiser is a very, very special player, but it's not his Kaiser impact that makes him special. It's not his speed. It's not his technique, but it's his top-notch vision. So it's the first time Isagi is introduced to a player with high-quality vision. And let me tell you something, Isagi puts respect on Kaiser. He glazes Kaiser so much that everyone respected Kaiser at that moment. But don't worry. Just because we are glazing Michael Kaiser, it doesn't mean that we forgot about dethroning the guy. But Isagi got a different kind of motivation from this. Isagi was like, let me just use this vision for now. Immediately when Isagi unlocks this vision, a player just decides to, let me join with Isagi. We meet the shark boy Corona. Corona runs. our famous, our favorite, our fan favorite. But Corona just brings a different type of vibe to Isagi, because even though Isagi is lacking when it comes to dribbling or to technique, Corona is different when it comes to that. When it comes to technique, Corona has it all. When it comes to dribbling, Corona has the dribbling. The speed, yeah, he does have the speed, but keeping up with Isagi will prove harder for Corona than he thought. But Corona and Isagi were able to build a chemical reaction that we call the planet hotline. Let me tell you something. Let me tell you something. Wait a minute. Let me tell you something. So the planetary hotline was the most wonderful chemical reaction we've ever seen so far in Blue Lock. Because we've never seen players move like this together. It was like Corona Ranzo was running around Isagi Yoichi. Like full circles around Isagi Yoichi. And let me tell you, this boy did everything to support Isagi selflessly. He sold his soul to support Isagi. Okay, Corona aside, let's stop chasing Corona. But Isagi here gets a partner, and with a partner, he can focus more in thinking rather than keeping position. So this is where the first evolution of Isagi comes. Isagi scores, was it his first goal? No, but when Isagi tried to score his first goal, Michael Kaiser came to disturb him again. And then it happened that Kunigami scored another goal from or off of Isagi. And at this point, you could tell that Isagi was pissed. Man. Like Kunigami already got 2 goals from Isagi, and Isagi didn't come to Blue Lock to assist other players. Isagi is furious at this point. He wants to eat Kaiser alive. But with that being said, Kaiser pulls one of the most insane goals we've ever seen in Blue Lock. A Kaiser impacts in the air, I think, or maybe that's the next game. I'm not sure, but we get to see the Kaiser impact and its story. And then we get to see Chikiri, and then Isagi realizes that, you know what, I need to lock into. But Isagi's final decision was insane because there was a player trying to devour Isagi from his own team. I don't know if you know Yukime, But Yukimiya had the illusion that Isagi and Michael Kaiser are the same people. They just use other people for their own benefit, which is true, by the way. But Isagi was like, you know what, fuck you, nigga. If you're not willing to work with me, I am Isagi. I am him. I will devour you. And I will devour you till you understand that you will have to work with me at the end of the day. Isagi and Yukimiya are not working in terms of passing Isagi every time. Nah. But Isagi made Yukimiya understand that his philosophy was naive. But Yukimiya learned that the hard way. But Isagi was starting to use other players because if people like say you're like you're evil, at the end of the day you become evil. So that was Isagi's stance point. If you think I'm a bad guy, trust me, I will be a bad guy for you. So we saw Isagi's ego change in a very different way. But before we got to see Isagi win this match, we saw something else. We saw the 5-stage revolt. It was the 5-stage revolt. I'm recalling it correct. So Nagi scored a super goal and block. And trust me, Nagi's super goal was just out of the world. But the only problem with that super goal is just he couldn't recreate it. And Isagi could tell that this is a fluke. So Isagi learned something when it comes to was it trances? Not trances were learned before. But there's a puzzle that Isagi egocentrism. Egocentrism. I know that might sound like a made up word. I'm not sure even if egocentrism exists. But in this chapter we are introduced to egocentrism. And then Isagi is starting to understand that what each and everyone in this pitch feels like the center of the world. Everyone is a protagonist of their own game. If not, they are a sidekick of another protagonist. I don't know why I'm speaking difficult English like it's my first language. I'm trying, guys. Bear with me. But Isagi just understood that each and everyone has a different type of ego. And with my meta vision, I can see everyone in the pitch. But what if I can read each and everyone's ego? That is egocentrism, the ability to read other players' ego. So Isagi could just see a player and be like, okay, this guy, he's the selfish guy. He will want to stop me alone and then beat him. So Isagi learned a better way to study people, which is egocentrism. That was a very big, big W because when Nagi was at his highest peak of egocentrism, he scored the best goals we ever seen in Bulldog. But that satisfaction caused the downfall of Nagi. But this is not a Nagi stream. So Nagi aside, maybe we'll do it next time. But Isagi just did something different this time. You know, Isagi really got to understand even Michael Kaiser's ego that okay, Michael Kaiser is fucked up. So I need to use his ego against him. So in the final moment when Michael Kaiser thought that Isagi was going to score a goal, Isagi had devoured Yukimiya to a point that Yukimiya was starting to give up in football. Deadass during the game. You know, during the actual fucking game, Isagi devoured Yukimiya so fucking much that Yukimiya just couldn't continue playing football at that moment. He was a sinking boat during the game. Isagi just mentally abused Yukimiya, and then in the final play, when everyone thought that the relationship between Yukimiya and Isagi had fallen off, Isagi passes the ball to Yukimiya and he's like, you know what? Rise the boats that I sunk, or something like that. But it was some other farming shit. He was like, I destroyed you and I will make you again. That was Isagi's standpoint. And Yukimiya was like, what the fuck? This guy is twisted. Even Kaiser was shocked. Was like, oh my god, what the fuck? And then Isagi told Michael Kaiser that, you know what? You'll become a naked clown. And then the game ends, of course, that's fine. 2 games are down. And then we have the last 2 games. we have the last two games. So in the last two games, Isagi understands that, you know what, my direct shot isn't enough for me to win or to beat these players. I need to find another weapon. And he thought, you know what, Kunigami has become ambidextrous. Maybe I can copy Kunigami's training and become ambidextrous as him. But Kunigami was like, you know what, you don't have to become ambidextrous. You don't have to use both of your legs aside. Like if you can use a direct shot the same way you use it on your right leg, on the left, like direct shot on the left and right. That's the only thing you need. But he didn't tell him in that way. But Isagi is smart like that. Isagi understood that you know what? I don't need to force my body to shoot left and right. A direct shot with my left leg would be good enough. So we were left with a question mark. We thought that maybe Isagi won't be able to shoot with left and right. And trust me, we go to the next game. We're playing Italy Ubers. One of the best games in Block, without a doubt. Jealous down, Umona Panzi. Everything I say right now is facts. Everything I say right now, I really believe. So we reached the Italy Ubers game. And in that game, we get to see a different type of team. It was beautiful, guys. It was really. But did he play Manchester City or Italy Ubers first? It doesn't matter. But with the game against the Italy Ubers, Isagi was just grasping his own skills, meta vision, and egocentrism. But Isagi just showed us his lefty direct shot for the first time. The lefty direct shot. So great skill, great weapon. You understand? Okay, fine. Let it slide. But that wasn't the only thing that Isagi made in that game, or the greatest feat that Isagi did. We understand that his first proper goal in Bullock, the left direction. But there is something more important in this chapter that happened. Something way more sinister than you guys would find relevant, Because I understand that I understand that he showcased the left direct shot, but let me try to remember this shot. Oh, it was the bet between Isagi and Kaiser. So the boys made a bet. So what is the bet about, you may ask? So it was a competition to see who would score the most between Isagi and Kaiser. You know, as you could tell, this is quite a childish, but this is a rival. You understand? So Isagi had to win and prove himself against Kaiser because Kaiser has scored more goals than Isagi at this point. So Isagi wasn't ready to assist more people. Now he has to score goals for himself. But in the Italy Ubers match, we see Isagi score his first goal with the left direct shot is fine. Isagi learns more about defending, it seems. Isagi defends a few times. And the last point comes with Hiyori again. Because when it comes to one of the most important evolutions from Isagi, when it comes to evolutions from Isagi, Hiyori helped him English data bundles finished. But Hiyori helped Isagi the most when it comes to evolution. Isagi reflexive. The first, oh my god. Mhm. I'm back. So this was And we're back. Oh yeah. This was the first time Isagi just played normally, because he was evolving so much in the previous games that we couldn't keep up. But egocentrism and everything aside, Isagi was at his peak almost. And then he scored the final goal through reflexes. It's fine. We understand that Isagi is the MC, blood armor, whatever, whatever, whatever. Isagi is capable of scoring goals. Yeah. Come the final game against PXG. So this is without a doubt the best game to ever happen in Bula. Like, listen to this for a moment. This is one of the greatest moments to ever happen in Bula. But it's still underrated. Is it? No, it's not. But in this game, we get to see Isagi beat Kaiser and Rin first attempt. You know, we just see a different side of Isagi from this game. We see Isagi beating Michael Kaiser in a very different way than we ever seen him before. We've seen Isagi beat Kaiser and we've seen Isagi beat Rin before, but both of them at the same time, no. So Isagi does what devours Nagi and scores a two-gun volley. So we are introduced to Isagi's first new weapon in the final game, the two-gun volley. It's quite dope, I don't know. But the two-gun volley is not the most important thing to happen in this chapter. Because this chapter got to show Isagi different things. Because as much as you can tell, Isagi was evolving so much that he thought to himself that he was a genius. He was starting to think that he is a genius. A lot of us have made that mistake before. Like, thousands and thousands of us have made that mistake before. Like, okay, kind of this is the worst kind of mistake you can ever make as an individual. Thinking that you're a genius while you are not. Trust me, Isagi thought that he was a genius for a moment, and then he got introduced to geniuses. And then when I talk about geniuses, I'm speaking with guys or about guys like no, I'm talking about guys like Shido. I'm talking about guys like Loki. I'm talking about Minitoshi. So Isagi thought that Kaiser was also a genius and he himself was also a genius, but that's not true. They were geniuses and they were talented learners. So that's egocentrism coming from Isagi. So this is a deep dive of bullshit. I don't know why I know about egocentrism and everything like that, but yeah, I know about it. I do know about it. But Isagi learns more about egocentrism that there are two types of egos. There are geniuses and there are talented learners. The world is not just shaped and run up by geniuses only. There are talented learners in the mix. So Isagi gets to see that, what, maybe I'm not a genius after all. Genius of adaptability, that's something I used to hype myself with. That's cool. So when Isagi really, really comes down to it, he sees that players who are geniuses are just bastard. So this is where we see Isagi break down again because he fails to keep up with players like Itoshi, with players like Shido. Of course, it's always been difficult for Isagi to deal with Shido. I don't know. I really don't want to lie. But it was always difficult for Isagi to deal with Shido. So as Isagi is getting beaten by players like this, or players like Charles, he sees that maybe his data is not enough. He needs to learn more about Itoshi Ren and Kaiser for him to beat them. And then he gets to see that Kaiser is a person who thrives more in restriction. So does Rintoshi. He's a genius, but in a restriction type. And then there are geniuses, and then there are world type geniuses. World type are people who like to show I have to explain this, don't I? I really, really have to explain this. So, egocentrism, there are four types of egos. Okay, two types first. There's a genius and then there's a talented learner. And then there's a genius who drives in restricted conditions, and there's a genius or a talented learner that also drives in restricted conditions. And then there's a genius who drives as a world class ego, and there's a talented learner that drives as a world class ego. So a world class genius, something like that, is a player that likes to show their plays to the world. Players like Shiro. So Shiro is a world class genius, likes to show the world his plays. But Ren Itoshi, he's a player that succumbs to his own willful tendencies or things like that. So Itoshi Ren is more of a genius, restricted, ego type of a person. And then you have talented learners and restricted ego. Those are players like Michael Kaiser. Michael Kaiser is a talented learner with a restrictive ego. And then you have Isagi with as a talented learner and a world type ego. We have Ryo Mikage too in that position. We suspect that Sai might be in a world class or a genius or a talented learner. Between the two, I'm not sure. It was difficult. That was really difficult. So with that being said, Isagi just gets to understand more about the players, but that's when he understands that, you know, with everything that he still has, he's not good enough to fight against players like Loki. That's when Isagi decides to sell himself for victory, the biggest step of Isagi's evolution. This is the final step of Isagi. No, here Isagi he forgets about everything. He forgets about Rinito, she forgets about Kaiser being rivals and everything. Isagi goes back to zero. You might understand that from learning so much, how can Isagi go back to zero? It's impossible. But he did. Isagi just decided to go back to zero. And at some point, I was like, what's he doing? Because he has enough skills. But when I saw what type of a player he came out like after going back to zero, it was insane. Hence the thumbnail. Thumbnail, I think it represents it the most when it comes to the final form of Isagi. But Isagi is just different when it comes to him after selling his soul. This is what allows Isagi to beat players like Ren because till the very last minute of the game, he just devoted himself to winning and victory for the team. You know, so that was Isagi's final evolution, selling himself or becoming a puzzle for victory. You know. Now the boy is not an egoist, he's just a vessel for the team to win. He's a striker now. That's how Isagi scores the final goal. The final goal was insane. I don't want to spoil people much about the Bullock anime and everything like that. I know I've spoiled you a lot, but yeah, Isagi scores the final goal, it's fine. And then Isagi gets the number one. So as Isagi's number one, we just cut to the U20 tournament or the U20 World Cup. So the U20 World Cup, Isagi is wearing number 11 as expected or as previously as he did a long time ago. So Isagi is doing this type shit things are happening. Alright. Isagi had one of the greatest Isagi had one of the greatest times, I don't wanna lie. One of the greatest times when it comes to block. So now it's time for him to prove himself and he might score his goal in the next chapter or not. But now I really understand that I'm really, really cooked up. I'm really tired now. So the predictions of the next predictions of the next chapter, I'll do them in the next stream maybe. But for today, I'm just about to the call to the boy. So till the next stream, you guys, as a Bullock fan, as Bullock, I'm growing really at a very slow pace. But please subscribe, please like if you're a Bullock fan and you would like to join the discussions. Like saying please as an egoist is fucking fucked up. I need to find a better way to ask for people to subscribe. Because egoists don't ask, you know. So just subscribe, you guys, and hit the like button. Share this video if you can. Keep the video, share it, or post it in your FYP if you don't mind. But this is a this is a community based channel. And so this is a channel where we discuss maybe blog 4 times a week to 3 times a week. Man, I talk about anime a lot. I might end up singing. I might genuinely end up singing forever. So this is a anime channel mostly. Maybe for now, let's see, because yeah, it is an anime channel, and we discuss maybe One Piece or Blue Lock mostly. But Blue Lock is the most leading content in this chat in this channel, so it's just fan discussions mostly. These people in the comment section are the randoms in the streams. I have Edsol, I have Slips, I have Oradile, I have Sarik. So I really have 4 guys for now in the chat, and they do show support. I don't know, like, these boys do push me a lot. Without the common members of these streams, it would be really hard to do streams. But when these guys are around, it's quite a blast. But today it seems like they are quite busy. I really understand because I spend a lot of time with these guys. And I feel close with them around. Friends, maybe not, but yeah, I do have somewhat of a close relationship with them than I really thought I would. But yeah, guys, please subscribe if you're an anime fan or a Blue fan, and if you'd like to join the streams, if you'd like to join the streams or be part of the anime community that's just enjoying the streams. But I think in my next stream, I'll maybe do a Nagi stream and then maybe Blue Lock predictions, something like that. Young content, maybe 2 more videos for Blue Lock in this week because we are going to be chapterless for another week. So I will have to bring up, make up some ideas because I really need to learn more about streaming and content creation as a whole. So yeah, please join the community, guys. Support the boy if you will. I'd really appreciate that. I'd really appreciate that. But yeah, it will be a blog prediction chapter or stream, and then I'll do a Nagi stream, and then which player deserves a stream too. I think maybe I'll do a Bachelor versus. No, Bachelor is okay for now. Bachelor I think is cool. But I will have to find a player to chase and not look bad, but also create some ideas and some One Piece ideas too. I don't know if people here but watch different streams. But yeah, you can recommend animes and drop your anime because I read Kagurabachi. It was a sub request that I read Kagurabachi, so I complied as a good streamer. I complied to the request. I'm a Kagurabachi fan right now. I don't know why. And I really enjoy this streaming shit a lot, even though it's quite slower or more difficult than one might hope. But yeah, at the end of the day, it's what I like to do the most. Talking about anime is one of the best thing I can ever do. You know. So with that being said, I really appreciate everyone who showed up and blessed us with their presence. And with that being said, this is the end of the stream. Goodbye.